Hello, cosmic beings. Welcome to Being Cosmic. If this is your first time here, welcome, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I am so glad that each and every one of you are here. My name is Devon, and I will be doing a collective message today. So, with that, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Okay, I'm being guided to do something very different in this to start off this message. Um, so if you're interested, stick around. If not, you can fast forward and just look for when I start like shuffling the cards, and that will get into the reading. This should only take a couple minutes, but what I'm getting is that the collective that I'm talking to right now is going through like a really challenging time. And this has been prevalent. I'm just guided to kind of assist you energetically. So what I'm going to do is I've already tapped in, and then I'm being guided to send you some, like a boost, like an energy boost. And then ultimately, what I was guided to do is to release anything that is externally causing burdens, and then kind of clear some energetic cords from your energy field, and then bring your energy back into yourself, and then put up a golden shield. So if you're interested in receiving that, all you have to do is just kind of like take a breath and be open to it. If you can close your eyes. You might feel it a little bit more. You might see something like with your eyes closed, something like that. Obviously only do that if it's safe to do so. If you're driving or something, don't close your eyes. um But, yeah, so you can just intend to be open and allow it and receive it. Okay. So, it might get quiet for a minute. You might hear my rings clacking. I move my hands a lot, so you might hear that, but it might get quiet for a minute as I'm doing the energy work. So, let's do this. Okay. Okay. So we just released a bunch of external burdens. We're clearing that out of your energy field. Okay. Now I'm calling in assistance to cut cords from all time, spaces, places, dimensions, timelines, and realities. Anything that is lowering your vibration or affecting your ability to align with your highest self. Okay. Now we're calling your energy back into you. And now we're shielding. Okay. So, so it's done. So thank you for the assistance from the other beings that help with that. Angels, ancestor, spirit team. Um, Now the shield that I placed on you, it should last between 1 to 2 weeks. So if you're noticing yourself feeling like just a lot better, you could always like I was gonna say bookmark this, save this video and come back and just listen to the first few minutes after a couple weeks and receive that energy work again. Um, and then we're dealing in the quantum realm, so it doesn't matter when I post this, when you're watching this, it could be years from now. It's we're operating when that kind of work is done, it's operating outside of linear time. um so yeah. Alrighty. Okay, so now let's get into this message. Alrighty. So we are going to look at a snapshot of what is going on for you right now, bring through a little bit of guidance, and go from there. Before energy check-in. Ah, okay. Interesting. Right? That might have been. No. Where's the one? Ooh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to start with these four cards and then we'll get into these. Okay. So this is the snapshot. Is this what's causing that? Is that what's going on here? Okay. So this is okay. All right. So the first thing that I've noticed, there's a lot of water. So water is our emotions. And we've got the surrender card. So this is talking about really releasing those worries, those burdens and releasing it to the divine. And just knowing that you are helped. So if you look at this imagery, it's like she's holding herself. And so what this is kind of indicating is like this bigger version is like the divine or your higher self. And then this little version is like your human self. So allow yourself to kind of feel into that. Like, what does it feel like to fully surrender and say, sometimes we get to a point on this journey where we're like, I don't know. I don't know what the next thing is for me. I don't know how to navigate everything that I'm being bombarded with. It's too much. And when it gets to that place of being too much, that's the perfect time to let it go. And it sounds kind of weird because we're trained and conditioned. Like if you let it go, it's not going to get done. It's not going to get this. It's not going to that. The thing is, though, is we are looking at it at the human level from the ground level. The higher self, the divine, is seeing it from the bird's eye view and knows that it's okay if you take a day off and don't do anything. It's okay to have a nothing day. It's okay to just surrender those worries, those burdens, and release them. You don't have to carry them with you everywhere you go. You can release it to the divine and just continue to release it when those fears and those worries and those anxieties come up. Just, okay, I don't have to hold this right now. I can always pick it back up later, but I don't have to hold it right now. So I'm going to let it go for now. And I'm just going to let the divine handle it. And when it's time for me to know something or do something, I will get the guidance. I will know that it's time to do this thing. And when you can get into that space of surrender and just allow, it's one of those things. At first it's really challenging because we're trained and conditioned for, our whole life not to do things that way. You have to stay on top of it. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to remember this. You have to remember that. And it's one of those things like, yes, there are things that, we have responsibilities. We have appointments to get to and we have things to do. Yes, that is true. However, you don't have to carry it all with you all the time. You can let it go. You can surrender that and just like, I don't know what to do with this. So I'm handing it to you for right now. Give me the guidance on what's in my highest good to do with this situation. And then we've got wisdom. So this is knowing your truth. This is knowing that you know what is best for you. Everybody else can have their opinions, they can put in their 2 cents, and that's great and wonderful. You know what is best for you. You know what what your own truth is. And this could be something that you're really getting down to is really tapping into that inner truth and that inner knowing and knowing what is meant for you, what you do desire, what you're being called to. And it's really that knowing your truth. It's interesting. So this is like the flaming sword of truth, and that can be associated to Archangel Michael, which just a little, kind of side note, Archangel Michael did come in and assist with that cord cutting that I just did. So maybe you're being called to work with Archangel Michael. The archangels are non-denominational. They're just pretty high vibrational beings that we can call on to assist us in some of this. And you don't have to specifically call on one. They work really well as a team. And so you can call in all the archangels. You can even say something like, angels, help guide this day for me. Help guide me through this day. And then start to pay attention to when that guidance comes in. Maybe you hear things, maybe you see things, maybe you know things. Really tap into those extrasensory abilities that I feel like you've been already working with. And this is, intuitively, you'll get those intuitive signs. And that's the thing too, is like when it's time to do certain things, intuitively, you're going to be called to do that. When we really start to find this struggle is when we're going against our intuition. And so that could be something you're really starting to discern right now is like, what is my intuition versus what is my like logical mind telling me right now? Um, okay. And then we've got, if you heard me go, ooh, that was this card. This one's really, really big. So the resolution card is really coming to terms and making peace with the past. This can indicate inner child healing. So you could be doing inner child healing work right now. Like reparenting your inner child, things like that. It's one of those things that, a lot of us walking around on the planet, our parents were human, right? So they didn't always show up for us in the way we needed. And it's not to blame, it's not to, get into that victim mentality. It's just understanding and saying, okay, there were certain things that happened when I was a child and I needed a parent to show up in this way and they didn't. And so what you get to do is you get to reparent yourself. And the beauty of it is what your inner child needed at that time. And so you can provide that to your inner child now. And so it's really profound. This is actually very, very profound. Inner child healing is, I mean, there's a lot of trauma therapy and all of this stuff, but inner child healing, that's when you actually get to bring those pieces of yourself back in. And then you'll find when you do some of this inner child healing work, especially if you experience like a heavy trauma, um, childhood basically, where there was just like a lot of stuff, you went through a lot of stuff. Um, when you actually reparent your inner child and give your inner child what it needed back then, you'll find that when those because I'm getting somebody who maybe you have CPTSD and you get kind of flashbacks, or it's like your mind keeps going back to this thing that happened and you can't stop it. It just comes in, it's just bombarding. The thing is that's so beautiful when you reparent your inner child, that doesn't happen anymore because there's not a part of you stuck there because you were able to heal it, bring it back in. And then when you get to a certain point, your inner child feels safe. And then you can navigate between, letting your inner child out to play. And then when it's time to be an adult, and, handle adult stuff. And then so you're not, walking around with like a neglected inner child because a lot of us on this journey are. It just is what it is. And so it's actually a beautiful, beautiful, profound healing experience when you really start nourishing that inner child within. Um, there was something else that was coming through. Um, hmm. This can also, and I'm just going to say it, this can also indicate really um finding forgiveness in the situation of being an actual victim, right? So there's a difference between victim mentality and then actually being a victim in a situation. And so this can really indicate finding that forgiveness of the situation. It's not necessarily forgiving the person who was the aggressor, especially because I'm getting for some of you, this could be like essay stuff. This could also be, it's just, I can't say that word on here, I don't think. Uh, ABUSE in general. Um, it can really talk about kind of finding peace with the fact that that situation happened, and then also doing healing around it so that it is no longer a leading part of your story. It's no longer something that you have to identify with. It's one of those like, yes, I experienced some things. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. However, I understand kind of the greater design in it. And also, I've done my own work to where it's not it's it's basically you're not walking around with these invisible emotional gaping wounds anymore. Because that's really what it is. Unhealed trauma turns into these invisible open wounds, and then when somebody says something and it triggers you, it's hitting an invisible wound is really what's happening. And so with this kind of work, this is where you're healing those parts of yourself. And so you don't get as triggered because you understand that, these people are going to do their thing, and most of the time it actually doesn't have anything to do with you. It's their own shit. And then you're not over here being reactive all the time because people, it's like when you push on a scar, it doesn't hurt. But if it's a gaping fucking wound and somebody comes and pushes on it, it hurts. And then you react because it's painful. So it's the same thing when we're talking emotional stuff. It's just, it's invisible. So it's really difficult to see and understand what's happening. And then we're just like, oh, we reacted. And then sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, well, you did this to me and then I reacted. And then it's like, yes, and also that was also a beautiful sign of like, hey, there's some pain here. Let's look at this. And I feel like you're really kind of in the midst of this profound healing. And that could explain why you're really kind of having a difficult time right now. Because this is deep, deep inner work. This is the inner work that honestly most people don't do because it's fucking uncomfortable and it's painful and it sucks. And you get to face certain things. You get to face yourself. You get to see where you reacted because of your own shit. And then understand that, and it's also understanding like you can take responsibility for your stuff while simultaneously not taking responsibility for somebody else's behavior. And so this is where it's really unentangling that those interactions and being like, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for my stuff. And this isn't saying you have to call up somebody from your past and, you know, and verbally talk about it, or like if it's an aggressor and you experience some serious trauma, it's not like you have to call that person up and be like, I forgive you. It's not that. It's just you taking responsibility for your part in certain situations. And then also when you were actually a victim, because I'm getting whoever I'm talking to, you experienced some stuff where you were, you experienced that. You experienced what it was to actually be a victim of something. Um, and it's giving yourself permission to feel that and then heal that, and then also release like that anger and that you're the reason why I blank, blank, blank. So it's a very multi-layered thing. It's not going to happen overnight. This is something, it happens in waves. Remember that too. It's like the spiral. So, you go a layer and then you feel better. And then all of a sudden you get to go a layer deeper later on. And so don't try to rush this process. Don't think that it needs to happen overnight. Don't think it's a process. And the thing is when you allow yourself to work through it, and then also remember to live as well, because sometimes we can get so stuck in shadow work and healing that we forget to live. And so it's one of those things like it's a balance. So allow yourself to go there, allow yourself to go deep, allow yourself to break open, allow yourself to feel these things, allow yourself to show up for your inner child in the way that your inner child needed back in that moment. And it's not saying that it's going to change that situation, it's just it changes how it affects you from this point moving forward, because you are now telling your inner child, it wasn't safe then, you are safe now. And so it's a profound healing thing. And so I we're talking about quite a few different types of healing techniques here. Um, but it is really profound. So, if you're unfamiliar with inner child healing, I would definitely say to do some research if you're feeling called to it. It is very, very, very healing. The other thing too is there is like this focus on inner child healing, and what I've done is I've taken some of those techniques because I experienced some things as an adult that were intense, and I actually used some of those same techniques to be what I needed when I was 19 years old, when I was 20 years old, when I was, however old. And it's really it's really profound because you allow yourself to kind of bring that part back so you're not stuck in this traumatic situation that happened. And that's what happens with unhealed trauma. And it's not the fact that trauma itself is bad. Every human experiences trauma. It's if you have the tools and the resources to move through it so that it doesn't, it's not this open, invisible wound. And so that's the thing is it's like you can work with yourself, even, your inner child and go back to some of those experiences and hold the space that you needed and be the safe adult that you needed in that time. And it pulls that part of you back and it closes that wound. And then you're not walking around with all of these invisible wounds anymore. So it's very, very healing. It's very profound. And it's one of those things too, like this isn't something that you just do some inner child healing for a couple days and then it's done. This is something that, you learn some techniques that work for you. Some of you may be called to work with somebody else that can kind of help you move through this process. But it's one of those things where you work through that and then, you go about your life and then all of a sudden another memory just keeps coming in. And that's your sign of like, hey, there's something here. Let's go back into this and let's heal this thing. And then you go back and you go through that and then you healed another thing. And then, you live life again. And so it's understanding that this is a process. This is, it's something that's especially depending, I'm getting for some of you, you experienced a lot, like a lot. And so at first, if you've experienced a whole hell of a lot and you have a whole lot of unhealed trauma, it's going to take some time and it's going to be kind of more of a process at first. And then allow yourself to kind of like go through that process and then live a little bit. Get out, live life, go into nature, do those things, find things that make you smile. And then when those memories come back up or when that trigger happens, then it's information. And so it doesn't, once you're kind of aware of it, it's not as painful because it's more of like, oh, what is this teaching me? What trigger is this? What is this telling me? Look at it as information that you're being called to do something with. So, yeah. Okay. And then we've got resurrection. And this is really talking about bringing something from the back burner up into your focus. So this could be a childhood dream. This could be, I mean, it's anything. It's anything that you tabled for later that's coming back up to the surface now. For some of you, this could indicate some of that healing, some of those, past pains and things like that that are coming up to be healed now. Um, I am definitely getting that there's something here like a childhood dream coming back online or like, something that you really desired coming back online and you looking at it again and maybe reassessing it. So if there's something that's been coming back up for you that you kind of tabled and you're just like, I'm gonna put this down for now, but maybe later. So it's not like you fully let it go, but you were just kind of like, I'm just gonna focus on this other stuff. There's something here where for some of you, it's actually picking up that thing that's going to bring another layer of healing. And it's not necessarily active healing where you're like consciously working on moving through some of those painful things and so on and so forth, like what we were talking about. Sometimes what can happen when it's a very profound healing thing is we allow ourselves to be like, okay, I can actually still do this. I'm not too old. I haven't ran out of time. I'm whatever, there's lots of different limitations that we put on ourselves for things. And so it's that thing of like allowing yourself to do something that you wanted to do. And in that process, when you allow yourself to do the thing that you're being called to do, you will find a sense of healing in that because you are allowing yourself to do something that brings you joy or go towards something. And then I heard someone, so this could be a person as well, that you are being called towards. And by allowing yourself to actually move towards that or take some of those action steps towards that, that can provide a layer of healing that isn't like, yeah, it's just kind of like a byproduct of it because and it has to do with alignment. And so when you're in alignment, you're naturally just gonna feel better. So, okay. And that's part of this too, like the unhealed trauma and those gaping wounds, what they do is they don't allow us to fully get into alignment because there's always something that like when it gets poked, when that wound gets poked, then we're boom, we're right out of alignment. And so that's ultimately what this is about is this is you aligning with your most authentic version and really, aligning with your higher self. And the main thing to align with your higher self is to remove the things that aren't in alignment with your higher self. And carrying around a lot of unhealed stuff or guilt or shame or those kinds of things aren't allowing you to actually align with your higher self, your highest self, your higher self, whatever. Okay. Now we've got these 4 cards. Give me just a second. Okay, so sometimes I get into like a super channeled state and then I kind of have to bring my energy back a little. So I paused it for a minute to do that. And then something else came through with these cards. Okay. So the other thing that you could be really working on right now is kind of finding a resolution within yourself for certain things that you did or didn't do due to some of that unhealed stuff, right? So this is giving yourself the forgiveness of acting in a certain way when some of those wounds were pressed on by somebody else. It's forgiving yourself for, yeah, for reacting in certain ways. It's forgiving yourself for handling situations in a certain way. And it's it's not denying accountability. It's taking accountability for it and then also simultaneously not beating yourself up for it. So it's like, okay, now I understand why I acted in certain ways in certain situations. And, like, I did some shit. But it's also saying, like, okay, I acted from that place and I've learned a lot and now I'm not, now I don't do that anymore. Now, or I don't want to do that anymore. And I want to show up in this certain way and things like that. So it's allowing yourself to come to peace with that and just being like, okay, I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to not take accountability for it, but I'm also not going to sit here and take the responsibility for everybody else's stuff, and I'm also not gonna beat myself up for it. So, yes, I'm not proud of it. However, it kinda is what it is, and I've learned a lot, and now I know in different situations that I will show up in a different way. I'm not walking around with some of these gaping invisible wounds anymore, and so it's also understanding that aspect and coming to peace with it. And then there's also this element of a lot of times we will do things because other people tell us to, or that's societal expectations and so on and so forth. And so it's also coming to peace with that. So it's one of those like, if you had a childhood dream of a career and then you chose a different path because of whatever reason, and let's say it was because you were listening to what other people told you you should do instead of listening to what you actually wanted to do, it's coming to terms with that, making peace with it, and just like, okay, it is what it is, and it sucks, and it's frustrating, and I wish, I had at least one person to support this dream, and maybe I would have done it. But then also understanding that one, it's not too late. You can still do something, that is just as fulfilling. Maybe it looks a little different, but it will be just as fulfilling and it's still going to light you up. And so that's where it's finding that internal truth and then listening to that more than what other people are telling you should do or shouldn't do or you must do or whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to do things this way. And it's again, it's listening to that inner wisdom. It's listening to your higher self. It's listening to the divine. It's listening to your guidance and aligning with the life that you are now cultivating for yourself. Okay. Then we've got these 4 cards over here. So we've got simplicity, initiation, discovery, and renovation. Wolf duck. Okay. State. Okay. Interesting. So I'm being shown like this is kind of what triggered this. So this is your current state, what we were just talking about. And then this is like what is that the advice? No, this is what was going on. That's okay. So you discovered something. This card is like it's brutal. It's a brutal truth that comes to the light. It can be like a family secret. It can be finding out you have a sibling that you never knew about. It can be, I mean, it's really big and it's life-changing and it's intense. This can be somebody close to you passing away. It's things like that that come to the surface that change just so much about your reality. Um, for some of you, I'm getting a really interesting specific thread of energy. This could have to do with somebody from your past where, yeah, okay, so for some of you, it could be if okay, it could be coming into the awareness of a soul connection that you had with somebody from your past. Um, it's very specific, but it was coming through. So that could absolutely be something that triggered this major like healing and not knowing what to do and surrendering, but also finding your own truth and then bringing it up, bringing it back up to the surface. And this resurrection energy is also sometimes it's coming back around in a different form. And so if this is about a specific person from your past, this is about this coming back up to the surface for you, but you and that person are in a different form. You're in a different energy. So that could absolutely be something that kind of triggered this state that you've been in. Um, and it could be anything like that though. It could be, I mean, it could be so many different things, but it's a very profound, um, like this is the kind of thing like there's a difference when you think back on it later, like before you had this awareness and then after you had this awareness, like it marked a very big change in just how you see things, how you operate. It can trigger you to go down the healing journey. Um, all of that. So something very profound came into your awareness, and it could be multiple things for some of you. So it could be like somebody passed away and that made you really start kind of contemplating different things and like really tapping into like, what do I believe about the afterlife and how all of this works and what is a soul and how does this work? And then that sparks you on this journey of really discovering your own truth when it comes to the spiritual component of everything. Um, obviously, if you found out that you have a sibling that you never knew about and then you connect with them, that's going to change things. So stuff like that. And then there's initiation here. So this is something, for some of you, this is a spiritual awakening that happened. And spiritual awakenings can happen in different ways for different people. So it's one of these things that you, at some point, your higher self came in and was like, now's the time, and starts to put you through an awakening process. And so, at some level, at the human level, you agree to it. And you're like, okay, and it could just be something like that where you're like, I want to know more about how the spiritual side of things interacts and affects physical reality. And then boom, that's what sparks your spiritual awakening. So it's oftentimes something that does happen at a conscience level, at the human level. And then it's also like the higher self and the divine saying, okay, now's the time. And then, dark night of the soul and, shit from the past coming back up and, spiritual experiences and all these things. So this is a major initiation that you've gone through that has paved the way for you to process everything that's coming up for you now. And remember, because this processing and this healing, this looking at stuff from the past and inner child work and all of these things, it can feel very overwhelming in the moment and it can feel like it's never going to end, but it does. And it's one of those things like there's always more we can learn, there's always deeper layers we can go, and it's really to continue to align with your most authentic version, which is going to vary and change based on life and circumstances and so on and so forth. And so it's one of those things like it's never really done. However, you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I've done things like healed my attachment style and I'm not being bombarded with these freaking traumatic memories of shit that happened in the past all the time. Just like waking up trying to have a good day and boom, I'm back in this, I'm back at 7 years old when this thing happened and I'm just thinking about it and how shitty was that or whatever. Those kinds of things don't happen as much anymore. And when they do, you have the tools to deal with it right away. And then it says it's not as intense and it's not as much of like a phase to where right now I feel like you're kind of in the middle of that phase of just like you're really in that pressure cooker. And it's a divine pressure cooker, and it's one of those things like you'll go through that pressure, and part of it is actually to get you to surrender and to let it go and then follow the guidance. That's a part of why we go through this pressure cooker phase. um and the other part is like to have the ego breakdown and to really tap into the inner self and the most authentic self and align more with the higher self and things like that. So that's part of the reason. The other thing too is it's that concept of like turning coal into a diamond. It's one of those like we'll go in this fucking divine pressure cooker, and it is uncomfortable and it is unpleasant and it is just sometimes you don't know which way is up, which way's down. You're just like, what the fuck? Reality's cracking open. You're learning things. You're seeing the truth behind things. Trauma's coming up, and you're just like, "Wah," like, it can be a lot. Just know you're gonna get stuck in that pressure until you allow yourself it's to crack you open in a way so that you can transform and become the version of yourself that you are actually desiring to be. So remember that. And that's the part too, is remember that you are an empowered sovereign being, and you're going through this for a purpose, for a reason, and it is for your highest good. It just might not feel like that right now. Um but it is. It really, really is. So just know that. And you're never alone. The divine is always with you, regardless if you see that and know that or not. It is what it is. The divine is always with you. The divine is within you. Your soul is a spark of the creator. So remember that. Like you are literally a spark of the divine walking around in a human body. That's pretty profound. And so it's also remembering like you're never truly alone, even though sometimes, because I'm getting that you might be at that phase where it feels really fucking lonely right now. And just know you are being supported by beings and ancestors and just the divine, itself. You're being supported by the creator of all things. So just remember that, you've got Mother Earth that's with you all the time. You've got birds flying overhead. Like you're never truly alone, even though sometimes it can feel like you're really alone on this journey at times. And sometimes that's a part of it, because when you're alone and you don't have anyone to go to, the only choice is to go in. And when you go within, that is where you find your truth. That is where you can really get clear on what this is that's being resurrected for you, that's coming back up to the surface for you to do something with now. The renovation, this is a new beginning, and it's in fire. And normally this can talk about like physically purging things and like doing physical work, basically. Like building a shed, or purging stuff, or deep cleaning, or things like that. It can indicate that. It can also indicate like moving, like packing and moving and unpacking and all of that. It can indicate those things physically. What's really coming through, interestingly, is that might have been a part of this. There could have been something in the physical world that kind of sparked this process for you. The main thing is I'm getting like this spiritual initiation created this beginning for you into more of the spiritual side of things. And so that's part of what's going on too, is this is a part of your initiation. And so remember that. And then the simplicity card, this is dropping the baggage. So this is another one of like purging things. So this can be literally like going through physical belongings and donating things or selling things that aren't a part of where you are wanting to go, so it could be things that you bought in survival. It can be things that you bought that aligned with a different version of yourself that you no longer are. This could be maybe you're doing a wardrobe change where you're changing the things that you're wearing that are more in alignment with who you are now. This can be anything in the physical. This is also dropping the emotional baggage. It can be taking responsibility for other people and their emotions. It can be, for some of you, part of this process, this kind of side note, part of this process that you could be going through is actually having some of your emotions come back online. And so, for some of us, on this journey, depending on, your background and everything else, a lot of us actually shut down our emotions and we're like, we're just not going to feel shit. So fuck off. Like, I'm good. And then you keep people at an arm's length and you're like, I'm good. I'm not, no, and just like, I'm not feeling the shit. And so for some of you, part of this initiation that could have happened, especially because this is emotional, you could have had something spark in some way that caused your emotions to come back online. So I'm getting for some of you, this could have been a heart opening. Um, and then all of a sudden you're just finding yourself feeling things that maybe you haven't felt in years. And then it's one of those when that emotional tap turns on and you're allowing yourself to feel things from the past, remember it will end. Because and I'm speaking from experience because I did this for I was fucking dude, I disassociated all the time. I just didn't feel shit. I was just like, "Oh, another situation, boom, I'm out of my body. I'm disassociating. I'm, handling it and what the way I need to handle it, and we're gonna move on." Um, and so for me, when I had my emotions really kind of come back online, I was like, if I start crying, I might never stop. And you will stop. You'll run out of tears. And it's actually very profoundly healing when you allow yourself to actually feel things again. And the thing is once you feel a lot of this stuff that you haven't been feeling for a long time, especially if it's been years, at first it's very disorienting because you're like, I'm just fucking emotional. Like I am completely out of control. I'm emotional about everything. Because for me, I'll speak from my experience and maybe you'll kind of relate. For me, it was one of these things that like I could empathize with other people and things like that, but when it came time to actually being in my body and feeling my own emotions about my own experience, I was disconnected from it. I disassociated, and there's there's a lot of reasons why, but it's just kind of conditioned to do so. And so once I actually started really feeling it and actually really like going and doing some of this inner child work and actually feeling like what the fuck was going on and stuff like this. It was so much. And I was just like, I felt out of control. I felt like I couldn't really be around people because I was just open and raw. And like if somebody looked at me a certain way, like I was fucking angry. And then I was like, what the hell? Like, I'm gonna crash out, and I haven't crashed out in years, and I just wanna, like, rah, and it was just, like, so many emotions just going fucking crazy, and then it was, like, after a period of time, then it kinda settled down. It was like, "Okay." And now it's one of those, I'm kind of in a different place now, but now it's one of those, like, and I still have to give myself permission. I'm like, feel your shit. It's okay. It's okay to cry. It's not a big deal. It's a lot of mental stuff. And I could be talking to a masculine because I was just thinking about this. I personally, I had a lot of programming that boys get. It was very much like, showing a lot of emotions is a sign of weakness, and you don't really have a right to feel your emotions, and you're too emotional, and you're too sensitive, and blah blah blah. So I heard that, when I was a kid, and then so as an adult, I just turned my emotions off. I was like, oh, that's easy. I'll just not feel anything, and then just walk around kind of numb and disassociated, and that worked for a while until it didn't. And so that could be something that you're experiencing is where all of a sudden that emotional tap gets turned on and you're just like, what the fuck? And then sometimes you can get to a point where you're like, I don't want to feel anymore. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to feel this shit. But the thing is when you feel it, you release it. And so that's that whole thing of like feel it to heal it. There really is that really is a true thing. And this is really so I'm going to do a separate video on this at some point, but there's different phases of awakening. So you have a spiritual awakening where you're connecting with spiritual things, you're having spiritual experiences, and it's great and it's wonderful. Sometimes it's a little scary at first until you get used to it. Um, but you've got the spiritual awakening. Then you've got I term it the physical awakening, and that's when you're really like looking at actually, doing healthy things for your body and so on and so forth. And you're listening to your body and fueling it with what it's, asking for and things like that. So to me, that's like the physical awakening, being aware of what you're putting on your body, in your body, so on and so forth. And it can also be like environmental stuff where, you're removing toxins from your home and doing those kinds of things. That's kind of the physical awakening. The mental awakening is where you become aware of a whole lot of truth. And that one's a doozy. That one can bring about a lot of anger. And then you've got the emotional awakening. And I feel like that's really what you're going through right now is the emotional awakening. And I'll be honest, I would rather go through the other three 5 more times than go through the emotional awakening again because it was so fucking disorienting for me personally. And so this could be something that you're going through right now is really going through that emotional awakening. The thing is just know that it will settle down. It will calm down. Um, if you're really just having all these emotions and you don't know what to do with them and it's overflowing and everything else, it will calm down. That being said, there is kind of a little asterisk here, a little kind of caveat side note. When you're going through this emotional awakening, because we have this resolution card here, and for some of you, this is a person, if this is a person, this isn't somebody, this wasn't an aggressor or somebody like that. If this part is for you, this is somebody that you are desiring to communicate with. This is somebody that you have overflowing emotions about. And I'm getting a romantic thread of energy. So if that is the case, there is something here of allowing yourself to actually reach out to that person and express those emotions and allow them to flow. And it's okay to let them flow. It's scary. You're going to feel very vulnerable and it's, and it's probably going to be uncomfortable because I'm getting that I don't really feel like you've done this before. And the thing is it's one of those what you are being given when it comes to this person. Again, this is very, very specific. Only take this if it resonates. What you're being given when it comes to this person is an opportunity to be received when it comes to your emotional state in a very mature way. This is a person, if you're being called to express your emotions to a person, this is a person who can actually hold that space for you, receive, like, listen to what you're saying, even if it's emotional, and not like, and just actually be able to hold that space and receive what you are expressing. And for some of you, it's going to be a mutually emotional thing. And so it's actually going to be a gift where you and this person are going to be able to give each other the gift to be held and received and processed through some of these really it's not like bad emotions, it's just really intense, it's like overflowing emotions that's coming up. So if you're being guided to do that, listen to that because that's part of this healing that you are asking for at a level. Maybe it's not a full conscience level, but there's a part of you that's asking for that, and the divine is attempting to give you a gift of actually processing through some of this with another person. And it's not saying you're going to go dump your emotions on this person. It's saying that this is a gift for you to actually be able to be open and vulnerable and raw and not have somebody take advantage of that and not weaponize that later on. So if that very specific thread of energy is for you, I feel like you're going to know yes. So that's a little side note. Okay. All right. Let's see if anything else wants to come out. So I was seeing if we were going to pull any more cards or go anywhere else with this. But the main thing that wants to come up at the end here is just a reminder to possibly do something with this energy. So so if you think of emotions as energy in motion, they want to move, right? So these emotions want to move. And the thing is you can channel that emotion into creations. So this could be something like painting, drawing, singing, rapping, dancing. Dancing will move those emotions. Physical movement in general, really, really can help. Writing music, journaling, it's getting it out and then creating with it can really, really be therapeutic. And it's one of those like if you are going, let's say you're going to paint, I'm going to use this as an example. This is one of those, like, there's different types of way to paint. So you can, like, come up with the plan and, you've got the vision of generally what you wanna paint, and then you sketch it out, and then you paint it, and so on and so forth. That's very, like, methodical, and it's a process, and if you're feeling called to do that way, go for it. What I would recommend when it comes to this, though, is really just let it flow. So this could be, like, where you're just doing abstract stuff. Nobody ever has to see it. But it's one of those things that it's just getting it and sometimes it can be, I actually did this. I took a painting class in college, and there was there was there was some shit going on. I'll just put it that way. And for one of these multimedia assignments, I actually designed a piece that was on it was about addiction, basically, and it was a physical representation of addiction, and, so that was a more methodical thing, and it was very healing to get it out onto a canvas and, do that physical depiction, and it was pretty intense, because we in that class, we had to, like, set it up, and then everybody would look at it when we were done, and then you'd get graded on it, and everybody that looked at it was like, "Holy shit," like, they could feel the emotion in it, and I was like, "Oh," like, that was kinda more for me, but, like, I had to get the grade, and those are the only people that ever saw it, it's I don't display it or anything, but it's one of those, it's very, very profound to be able to get it out. So if you paint, or if you draw, or if you make music, or if you know, I don't really know, like, I don't know, just whatever creations you do, if you sew, maybe you could sew something. And it's just a way where you're just letting that emotion move. And you're getting it out. And that's the big thing too, where a lot of us learn to suppress shit and repress shit. And there's a difference. Suppressing is a conscience not choosing to feel it, and then repressing is you don't feel it because you didn't have a choice. Um it's a survival mechanism. And so it's one of these things where the goal here is to allow yourself to feel those things without judgment, and then getting it out of your being. And when you get it out of your being, it no longer is there. And so that's a way you can release it. So, that might be something to look into, is really, find something that works for you. Another thing is like woodworking or building, like building different things, or like doing like house remodel stuff. That's a way to kind of get some of that energy, that emotional energy moving as well, and you channel it into that. And then obviously, like go punch a punching bag, that kind of thing too. Let it move. Don't judge it, don't deny it, let it move, and just allow it to move. And because when we judge those emotions, now we're creating other stuff that's gonna sit there. And so it's a letting it move without judgment. So if you need to cry for 2 straight hours, or scream about something, or whatever, it's getting it out of your system so that you can release it. And so, especially if you've walked around life for a long time without feeling things, it can be a flood that just comes out. And so, if you're really, I feel like for some of you, you're really in that kind of midst of this energy or this emotional awakening, where it's like you're feeling things you maybe have never felt before, and you don't know what the fuck to do with it. And that's a really good way. Obviously, therapy and things like that, coaching, stuff like that definitely can help as well. Um, but it's one of those, you can move through this without, sitting in, a therapist's office, like, or, well, nowadays it's like, through the screen, but you get my point. You don't have to process this with another person. And some of us are called not to do that with other people, especially if you've got, some childhood trust issues. A lot of us find different ways than traditional. And so there's just some guidance and some insight on some ways you can do it that are a little more untraditional, but they're still very, very, very effective. In really moving your body can really, really help too, because it sits in the body. And so when you move and you get your body moving, that can help release it without needing to mentally process it. And so that's the thing too, is a lot of times we get stuck in mentally trying to process it, and then it just loops and loops and loops and loops and loops. And then it's one of those, if you're in that energy where it's just like it keeps coming up and looping, keeps coming up and looping, move your body, get it out in a creation, do something like that. And then it actually releases from your energy system. And then of course there is that thread here where it's very, very specific, but if it is a specific person that you're feeling a lot of emotions for, and this is love energy. This is like there's regret in it. And then there's just like this overflowing love that is there for another person. If that is what you're dealing with and that is continuing to loop, you can do stuff like create with it and things like this. There is this energy here though. Sometimes that kind of stuff is going to loop until you allow yourself to do the thing you're being called to do, which in that case is to actually reconnect with that person. So there's kind of a little caveat in this. So just flip it how it fits. Ultimately, you're in a profound, profound place. And just know that on the other side of this, you're going to be very thankful you went through it. You probably won't sign up to do it again. I should speak for myself. I would not sign up to do it again. But now knowing what I know, I would do it again. Because it's very healing, and it changes you at a core level, because now you're not walking around trying to not feel and blocking and doing all of these things where it's like, you can just be like, okay, I feel comfortable with that side of myself. So, yeah, ultimately what you're doing is it's going to be very profound on the other side of this. It already is. It's just sometimes when we're in the midst of the storm, we don't see that it's ever gonna end. And so I feel like you might be kind of in that energy where it just feels like this shit is never gonna end. And just know it will. It is. You're kind of in the midst of it. Just do your best to process through it, know your truth, come to that resolution with some of those things from your past, and allow yourself to do something with that energy, because ultimately it's a lot of energy that's moving now. So allow yourself to do stuff with it and consciously move it. And that's ultimately my recommendation. So, alrighty dokie. Well, with that, I'm gonna leave this here. I'm sending you all the best, lots of love. You got this. It's all for a reason. You'll see it on the other side of this. Keep going. You got this. Surrender some of the worries and the anxieties and the burdens to the divine. That's really, really going to help as well. You don't have to carry all of that right now while you're going through this really intense internal process. So, alrighty. Well, again, wishing you all the best. You got this. Yeah, feel free to let me know in the comments below if this resonates. I would love to talk to you. And feel you can hit that like button. It does help out the channel, so thank you. And if you would like to see more from me, you can hit subscribe. It is free. I will see you on the next message. Bye.